Hello and welcome to Pathways, where you are invited to join me for a visit with leaders in personal and cultural transformation. This is your host, Paul O'Brien. Our guest today is Dianne Bischoff James, author of the new book, The Real Brass Ring. Change Your Life Course Now. Dianne has an MS in Marketing Communications and a BA in Psychology. She is the founder of an award-winning brand consultancy, Core Marketing Solutions, as well as Live Your Everything. She is a life reboot expert and dynamic motivational speaker who encourages audiences to create a reality that is prosperous, deliberate, and meaningful. She has been on her own transformation journey since 2002, losing 55 pounds, ridding herself of depression and numerous debilitating health problems, launching an active career, a healthy divorce, and surviving the perils of an addictive relationship, all after the age of 40. Hello, Dianne, and welcome to the Pathways program.
Hi, Paul. Thank you so much for having me here today.
So let's start by asking, what is the sense of the title for your book, The Real Brass Ring?
Well, the Real Brass Ring came up at a time when I was actually pursuing a simple birthday present for myself. And I scheduled an appointment with Sonia Choquette. She's an internationally known psychic and now has written many, many books. I think she's probably well over 10 to 15 books. And I went to go see her on a lark, actually. I thought at the time that she was going to tell me that everything about my life was groovy and that I was the cat's meow.
And why did you think that? Because you were cynical about psychics, or?
No, because I had pursued the American dream. I had the big house across from the lake. I had my own consulting business. I had all the stuff. I had the Prada bag, the cute shoes, and 3 kids, and helicopter parented them. And I thought she was going to say, "You go, girl. Everything about your life is right on track." But instead, she cut me to the core, and she said, "You're an unlit Christmas tree. Nothing about your bulbs are firing." She said, "You're completely off track, and if you don't hurry up and grab at the real brass ring, it's going to be too late."
Oh, and so what did you learn was what she meant by that?
What she meant is that everything about my life was wrong. Everything had been going down a programmed course. Nothing about it was authentic. Nothing was real. She said, become an actor, an author, a teacher, and a healer. And if I didn't do all that this lifetime, that I was going to have to come back and do it all over again. So I had not been pursuing anything in that area, nothing on a creative spectrum, nothing from a heart's desire. And I was 40 years old, and according to her, I was classified as a failure.
And what operating assumptions were you using in your life at that point? I mean, you believed you were a good girl, or what?
Oh yeah, I was programmed. I was a soldier. My father was German, ex-military, mother Irish Catholic. She was very passive, really didn't have much to say about our lives. And we were told that if we pursued 4 things in life, you're going to be happy. I was told I could be a doctor, a lawyer, an accountant, or an engineer. And if I did any one of those 4 things, I was going to be happy, keep my career job for life, and then sometime when you're significantly older, you can do what you want to do. So I kind of did the one-off. I have one brother who is a lawyer. I have one brother who is a doctor. And I said, oh, heck no, I'm not doing that. I didn't want to follow that specifically. And I was being a rebel by becoming a marketing expert for engineering companies. So I did the little one-off on that.
I see.
And so I was walking down the road with scripts in my head about what I had to do, what I should do, who I should be. And none of it was me. Not one bit.
I think it's interesting that you're talking about parental scripts and becoming free of them, and that Sonia told you to go to the Hoffman Institute.
Yes.
Explain the Hoffman Institute for our audience.
The Hoffman Institute, I like to call it emotional boot camp. If you have, everyone has some issues growing up. We're all imprinted. We're all being told how to behave from little kids. And the truth is, anything that happens between the age of basically from birth until about 12, according to Piaget, comes in as concrete operations. So we're being told everything we hear comes in as fact. Some people have a lot of issues and a lot of trauma and emotional things. That's, I call the steamer trunk. Some people have little carry-ons. I had like 3 steamer trunks worth of issues. So That's why I was 190 pounds, and I was, eating myself to soothe, and I was so depressed that I was sucking down Prozac like there was no tomorrow. And Sonia said, pack your bags and go to Hoffman as soon as you can, because it's the only way that you're going to be able to actually move forward and become you. And so they take you for 7 days. It's in the wine country, and for 7 days there's no TV, no cell phone, nothing that from the outside world. You deal with your authenticity, and you remove everything that's scripted from your life. So if you have an onion, you probably peel through maybe the first 8 layers. There's always a couple left, I think, but in 7 days you do pretty well. So it's about maybe 20 years of therapy in 7 days.
I actually have done the Hoffman process. So
did you? I didn't know that.
Yeah, no, that's a very good description of it, and I highly recommend it also. Now, section 1 of your book is entitled Midway on Life's Journey and On the Wrong Path, and that's what you were talking about, how you had achieved what many would consider the American dream. How did you, other than Sonia telling you you were off track, what were the symptoms?
Well, first of all, being obese.
Mm-hmm.
I had physical pain everywhere. I hurt head, shoulders, knees, toes, back, hands, feet. Everything was off, and I had a cloud over my head. I was clinically and chronically depressed, and of course you go see the doctor and you say, I don't feel good. I feel like I wake up into this darkness. I don't want to get up. I don't want to even go through my day. And what they do is they hand you a script. So at the time, Prozac was popular, and so that's what I was on. And the more I did and the more I achieved, the sadder I became. So all the external symptoms of being miserable and off course were there, but I still was so bound and tied to what I was told to do that I couldn't really break free. I needed the Hoffman to actually help me.
Oh, the Hoffman process is one of the hardest things I ever did. It's so intense, and it's like an intervention. It's like a surgical intervention. The longer you put off surgery, the worse it is. So it's interesting how your story reveals that we have to go through this initiation and be able to deal with how much we hate ourselves or how much we hate our lives, and be honest at a very deep level.
Because if you don't have any self-love, how are you supposed to find your path? How are you supposed to find your purpose? How are you supposed to find a relationship? If you don't love yourself, there's no way you're going to be able to reflect love back in your life. So the Hoffman is the one thing I hope everybody gets out of it, is I walked out with a glowing sense of self. I walked out knowing that I was a good person and a good mother, and that there was no way that I was going to be able to continue down the same course. And I also had a relationship. My marriage was very fraternal at the time. So it forced me to come to truth about the situation in every aspect. And that was tough. That was
As you put it in the book, you were, quote, facing the most powerful of all questions at that point. You came to face it. Who am I, and what did I come here to do in this lifetime? Mm-hmm. And so this was kind of a midlife crisis for you. What answers did you come up with?
Well, what I decided to do is, and this is tying back to the Hoffman, when you stand up at the end and you make your claim as to how you're going to change your life, I stood up in front of this group of 40 individuals that I had just grown to love over a week. And I said, I'm an actor. And the words just kind of flew out of my mouth, and everybody started clapping. And I kind of I was like slunk to the side of the room, and I thought, oh my goodness, you're not an actor, you're a liar. I hadn't been acting since I was in high school, and the words just came out. Maybe it's because Sonia told me that, maybe because I always just loved performing arts, but I decided no. Once I left Hoffman, one choice I made that was an active decision is I was going to become an actor no matter what. So I souped myself up. I got back home. I decided to go to the first audition I could find, which was for Oliver. Put literally a corset on, boots, and a giant puffy skirt so no one would notice that I was 190 pounds, and I decided to audition for Oliver and to try to go for the lead. And this is with no experience, really, no practice, and I really had nothing to put on a resume because everything would have been just from high school experience. And I got up there and I stood in front of these auditors, and they said, okay, thanks for coming, sing me a song. And not really knowing what I was doing and not having prepared and not sung in years, I just was able to squeak out the world's worst rendition of the only song I knew, which was Wouldn't It Be Loverly? And so I'm sitting here like screaming like a cat. They're starting to look at me like, what is this woman doing here? Why is she standing in front of us? Why did she think that she should audition for a musical? But they were very kind. The director said, okay, after she heard that, I really think she had to like wipe her ears a little bit, like, oh my God. She looked like Simon Cowell. You ever seen Simon when he looks at like, don't give up your day job? He has that horrible look on his face. Well, then she said, will you read for us? And I thought, yeah, but did you just hear me sing? But I said, sure. And for some reason, I took a script and she started reading with me, and I was reading for the lead part of Nancy. And this weird Cockney accent came over me, and I hopped into some strange little posture, and I started talking about Oliver and what's going to happen with Bill catches you, and I did this whole thing, and they all perked up. And I left that day thinking, oh, law of attraction. What you think about, you bring about. And so I thought, I'm going to get a lead in this show. And waited, I waited a day, and then I waited like 2 days, and then my third day, and by the fifth day I kind of figured they passed on me. But when I finally gave up and surrendered, I got the beloved phone call, and they said, Dianne, we want to offer you a part. And I'm like, yes, what is it? I thought, oh, I've got to get one of the leads here. And they said, we're going to offer you the part of townsperson 1. And I was so happy to get that part, because I was no longer a liar. I was now an actor, and I figured I had done right by myself and the universe, and I took that part with joy. I lost 30 pounds just doing that one play. I didn't even have a name. I think I said like 2 words, like, do you want a drink? Or, I said a couple words, and I was just running up and down the stage, and I had such a great time being in my fullness and just loving the lights, loving the camera, loving the theater, loving the audience. And it was so much fun that it turned everything around for me. And so from then I took other projects, and I eventually got an agent, and now I'm a SAG actor, and I've done 50 movies and commercials. And
wow.
Yeah, I was in a movie with Paul Sorvino last year, and I just came from a premiere last night.
Wow.
And so it's been unbelievably fun, and just a joyful experience for me.
That's a great story. And you mentioned the law of attraction. How has the law of attraction played a role for you?
It's changed everything for me. I like to, what you think about, you bring about is basically the fundamentals, if you kind of put it in a nutshell. And I am the queen of minding my mind. I make sure that every time I have the opportunity to think of what I would like a situation to be, or how I'd like to craft the situation, I do it actively. But most importantly, whenever something comes up that isn't positive, or isn't in the right space, or isn't exactly the way I want it to go, I make sure, and this is the number one tip, I always reach for the thought that feels better. It took me a lot of years to figure out how to get rid of my stinking thinking, but after practicing it now for about 10 years, I'm pretty good at always finding the silver, finding the light at the end of the tunnel. And so with that, the nice thing is life's different. Life's happier. Life's more fun.
Is the thought that feels better, that sounds like that could lend itself to wishful thinking.
Well, it's about how to reframe everything. How to reframe it in a perspective that will, number one, either bring you gratitude for the fact that you've learned something, or it will bring you appreciation for maybe the outcome wasn't exactly what you wanted it to be, but it allows you to appreciate where you are and where you're going, and it allows you to look at it from the perspective of 2 main things. Did you love something, or did you learn from it? And it's when you look at everything from those two positions, it's easier to have a beautiful, joyful life. Either I loved what I was doing, loved where I am, I love being here right now, I love your city, I love hiking, I love everything about being here. Or sometimes if you don't care for it, what's the big fat lesson in there? And once you become aware of your lessons, it's very easy to dissect them, a lot easier now, and to let them pass and don't repeat them.
It sort of reminds me of A Course in Miracles, where it says everything is either love or a cry for love. You could say everything is either what you love or what you learn from. It's kind of very similar to that. How did your experience as a life coach help you, in particular, through divorce and transition?
Well, I now am very fortunate. I have clients all over the country, and I help them with life rebooting. And very often they have situations where it has to do with either relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's looking for a new relationship, and they find that they keep attracting people that are unhealthy or reflect the other person that they either sent. They don't have a relationship anymore. They had a divorce or shifted. And a lot of times, what I find is my clients are people who are in the middle of a long-term relationship, and they're finding it's very stale. So not only does it help me keep my tools fresh, but I walk the talk. I live with the rules of micro-truthing in my relationships, and I try to help all of my clients use those tools to have better relationships, so that when you're speaking, it's your truth. Nothing is swept under the rug. I always say in my family house, we have a rug that's like 20 feet tall because no one has ever really told the truth in probably like 60 years. So the rug is so tall that, it basically breaks out of the top of the house. But not to live like that, to live in integrity and in your truth, but to say things in a healthy, happy, in a way that someone else could hear what you have to say, and then get to the core of the issue and to work through it. There's some really simple, easy techniques to make relationships much more fresh, much more new, and to keep them alive.
Now, you have some good ideas in the book on how to handle the fear factor when it comes to making big changes. Can you speak to that?
Yes. Fear is really the only darkness that we have on this planet. It's usually fear that comes in a couple of different areas. It's usually either fear that you're not good enough, the lack of worthiness. Fear that you're going to be rejected by others, so that has to do with the tribe. They're going to leave me. They won't be part of this anymore.
Ostracism.
Yep. Or it's fear that there's scarcity. The universe is not going to provide for you.
Right.
And in those camps, there's techniques and tools for each and every one of those where you can kind of excavate your own fear, so you don't have to block yourself, stop yourself, or take the steps necessary so you can have this great life. And so I work with my clients quite a bit on those techniques, working through what fear is it. And the funny thing, they all fall in those categories. And they're almost always self-made and self-projected.
Right. I think a lot of times they're based on conclusions we formed when we were 4 years old.
Absolutely. And
have never questioned since. There's some pretty funny chapters in the book. There's a chapter on online dating and what you learned from that. That's a very topical thing, because that's the way most people meet people these days. And it's interesting, in online dating, there's no blind dates anymore. There's not the same thrill of discovery anymore, because you've already Googled them, you've already gone to Facebook. But anyway, tell us about your adventures.
Well, I think I found that the only way, here's the upside of online dating. It's exciting. It's fun. It's fun to run to your computer and see how many either thumbs up you got or how many winks you have. I mean, there's something incredibly exciting about having a really boring day and know that you probably have like 5 winks waiting for you. So I found it to be very entertaining and slightly, addictive, in that I wanted to go back and back and back. The one thing that was really helpful for me is that I also looked at it a little bit more after a lot of experience and going on hundreds of dates that were not a good fit. I finally changed my attitude about it, and I looked at it more like a game. Stopped taking it so seriously. I got really clear and really specific. If there was someone I was actually interested in, I went straight to a phone call, because it's too easy to hide behind the screen.
Yeah.
It's just, you don't know if that person has any compatibility with you, because most of your senses are completely shut off. It reminds me of the monkeys, see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil. You're not even speaking. So I went straight to talk if I felt that there was actually a good connection. Set a lot of clean criteria.
Did you ever confront people, come up against people who didn't want to talk?
Most people were were happy to talk, but I found that, in that first conversation, there were a lot of screening There was more screening I could do. In the old time dating, you met someone, you could see their body language, you could hear their words, you could see if they had any weird tics or acted strange. You have none of that ability in the first step of the online dating. So I like to cut right through that.
Right.
And in the conversation, if any button went off that didn't seem right, I would run what I call a date over sign. It would go right across my forehead. And, you know, if they told me things like, you know, they had an ex who was crazy. Those were like words that like beep, beep. I'm like, I didn't want to deal with somebody's crazy ex. You know, I had a really healthy relationship with mine. I didn't want to work with that. So that was something I decided wasn't something I cared for. So I started asking healthy, normal questions. But, you know, if they said that they're on psych drugs.
On what?
Psych drugs, meds.
Right.
Psychological meds. Because after I left Sonia, I never took another pill. And I have never taken another, you know, medication like that. I dealt with myself with Hoffman. I eat well, juice. You know, I got healthy and fit. I didn't need to be on Prozac or any kind of medication. So if someone's on a lot of medication, I'm not sure that's something I was interested in if I'm dating.
Yeah.
So, you know, little buzzwords people would say, or if they, you know, if they had habits I wasn't interested at the time. I didn't smoke, so I didn't, you know, things where you just knew that wasn't going to be a good fit. And so I tried to use that as a screening process, and after that, I made the whole thing just a really fun game. I call it light fun. You can't get too serious about it. You're just getting to know the people and find those the first one had to be also, don't go to dinner. Don't go to dinner with someone that you don't know.
Yeah, right.
Because then you're stuck.
You know, I think one of the hazards of online dating is that there's this illusion of infinite choice or of infinite abundance that can make it very difficult to focus on the person you're with, because you know there's a couple of shiny objects waiting in the wings. Did you experience that, or how did you overcome that? Did you overcome that?
I think I was using it just purely for, I hate to say it, but just for going out and having a good time.
Uh-huh.
I think I took it a lot less seriously because I wasn't really trying to get anything. And the nice thing is when you don't have an objective and you're not desperate and you're not looking for, oh, I have to find someone because I have to have children.
Right.
Or I was really looking to find what I called a long-term partner. And in that, to make that not a serious thing at all. And I think because I was so chill about the whole thing, it made it very easy for me to have nice relationships. I made a lot of friends out of it. And I called it really fast. If there was no chemistry, boom. I called it immediately. Uh-huh. Like, oh, we should be friends. You know, you put people in the friend zone really fast.
How did you tell them that?
I would say we should be friends, and you know, I think the guy.
Did you say I'm just not feeling it, or
no? I try to say things nicely. I mean, I really.
Well, that's not so bad.
There's say things. I try to say things with heart, you know, or I'll say things like, you know, I think we'd be great friends. I don't know if this is it's something like this isn't really working for me, or I don't know if this is going to be romantic. I tried to say things in a nice way. We don't have a romantic relationship, but God, you're a really fun person. And I ended up making a couple of friends that I still have today from online dating, because it was very called out very quickly, very.
Yeah, and you were right. You were right about it. So I think we should bring up the chapter called Cougar Living. Tell our audience about that, and what did you learn from these relationships?
Well, what I learned at the time, which was a shock to me, is that I think the youngest person who ever asked me out was 25 years old, and I was in my 40s. And again, because I wasn't taking the whole thing very seriously, I thought it was just kind of funny and strange, but still entertaining. So I went out with somebody, and I felt so bad, Paul, honestly, because he wore a vest on our date because I think he was trying to look like a grown-up. It was just really awkward and weird, and I don't know, I felt like it was like another kid. I had another kid with me, so that didn't land. That was just a one-time evening. But for the most part, what I found is that really age is not a big deal. Right now, my fiance is 9 years younger than I am, and we never think about it. It's not a thing. It's just that I have a lot of energy, and so I'm normally attracted to people who are a lot younger because I like to do everything with adventure, and I would be a race car driver right now if I probably could, you know.
Uh-huh. So you talk about escaping the perils of an addictive relationship. What is an addictive relationship?
Well, for me, in that particular case, it was about falling in love with someone who is an addict.
Oh.
And this is a person who had in particular for him, his vice was alcohol. And I was so blind to the whole situation that I was addicted to saving his life. I was addicted to being in love with him, and then I was addicted to trying to save his life. So classic codependency. I had like this little nurse's uniform that all of a sudden I felt like I started wearing with the little hat and the sensible shoes. And I tried to take care of this person for 9 months and went through the almost like the darkness of hell. I felt like I went from having this light fun experience to seeing everything bad about the world, about getting arrested and watching people deteriorate physically and dropping every ball known to man and disappointing the people that you love the most and hurting the people you love the most. And I went right along with him for the entire ride. And I didn't know how to get out of it. And everyone who knew me said, you know, they were like trying to say, what's the matter with you? Why are you with this guy? I don't get what you're doing. Why are you in court? Why are you bailing him out of jail? I mean, things that I never thought I would do for anybody. I was sucked into the cyclone of how do you keep your heart full? And if I lose him, then I will never feel love again. So I had that pretty bad. And, you know, I don't want to do a spoiler alert, but it doesn't end well.
You write, the best part about being single was that I discovered something new, the real me. Now, why is it so hard for some people to be in touch with themselves while in a relationship?
Because you get lost.
Yeah, just like you were describing.
It's the lock and key. You provided the one thing, and usually, I hate to say it, you're modeling the parents, and so your lock goes into their key. And whether it's the, you know, trying to make sure everybody's okay, or making sure when I walk in that you've got your needs met and my needs are never met, or whether you want to be, you know, have a domineering personality with you because that works, whatever it might be, the relationships are your biggest mirror. I don't care if they last for a day. I don't care if they last for 15 years. That's your mirror of looking at yourself and how healthy you are. And the one thing that was able to really be fun is when you're single, it's fun to have a relationship and explore self-love and not have to do it with anybody else's
beautifully
issues.
Put. And thank you, Dianne, for so much for being here. I'd love to talk a lot longer, but we're just about out of time, and I want to make sure to tell our listeners about your website.
Okay.
So what is it?
The website is liveyoureverything.com, and the book is called The Real Brass Ring, Change Your Life Course Now.
And for those who tuned in late, this is your host, Paul O'Brien, author of Great Decisions, Perfect Timing, a book that shares the theme of pathways, which is personal and cultural evolution. In a second, I'll tell you how you can rewind and replay this entire interview with Dianne Bischoff James anytime you want via podcast on the internet or via iTunes. Today we have been visiting with Dianne Bischoff James, author of The Real Brass Ring, Change Your Life Course Now. I want to say thank you to